My boyfriend snapped and demanded I be more feminine. He had no idea how far I could take it. Jaden constantly accused me of acting like a man because I wore jeans and didn't always have nail polish on. He'd compare me to his ex who wore heels everywhere and never raised her voice above a whisper. When I got promoted at work, he sulked for weeks saying I only got it because I acted like a dude. After I fixed our sink myself, he exploded. "You need to start acting like an actual woman," he said. "Be feminine for once instead of stomping around like a dyke." How am I supposed to screw someone who's basically a guy? I set down my wrench and smiled sweetly. "You want feminine? I can do that." The next morning, I spent 4 hours getting ready for his family brunch, curling every eyelash and redoing my nails 3 times because the color wasn't perfectly feminine. Jaden had to arrive without me and explain to his mother why I needed so much time to look presentable for them, which she took as him criticizing my appearance. When I finally arrived looking like a pageant queen, his mom pulled me aside to ask if Jaden was making me feel ugly. I started speaking in a soft baby voice and acting terrified of everything masculine, which meant Jaden had to handle all the scary stuff like talking to mechanics, dealing with our landlord, and even ordering pizza because phone calls were too aggressive for delicate women. When his friends came over to watch the game, I served them snacks while trembling and flinching whenever they raised their voices about plays, making everyone uncomfortable and asking Jaden why his girlfriend seemed so scared of men. His best friend stopped inviting him anywhere because he said watching me act terrified was too disturbing. At his company barbecue, I wore heels so high I needed Jaden's arm constantly, clinging to him and gasping whenever a man came near because strange men were intimidating. His female coworkers watched him basically holding me up all day and started whispering about what kind of relationship we had. When his boss tried to shake my hand, I hid behind Jaden and whispered that touching strange men wasn't appropriate, making his boss think Jaden had trained me to fear other men. HR actually pulled Jaden aside later to ask if they needed to be concerned about his home situation. I refused to drive anymore because operating heavy machinery wasn't feminine, so Jaden had to drive me everywhere, including my job, my friends' houses, and the gym at 5 a.m. before his own workout. He was constantly exhausted from being my chauffeur, missing his own plans to pick me up, while his friends mocked him for dating someone who couldn't even drive herself around like an adult. He had to leave guys' night early 3 times to pick me up from various places, and they stopped inviting him entirely. The cooking and cleaning became performatively feminine too, wearing frilly aprons and pink gloves, taking hours to make simple meals because I had to make everything pretty, reorganizing his stuff with pink labels and flowers everywhere. His friends refused to come over because the house looked like a Barbie dollhouse exploded, and his brother took photos to show everyone what Jaden had turned me into. Even the pizza delivery guy asked if we were running some kind of weird adult daycare because of all the pink and frills visible from the door. My hyper-feminine appearance started attracting serious male attention everywhere we went. Men rushed to help me carry groceries, pump gas, reach high shelves, while glaring at Jaden for not taking better care of such a delicate flower. The guy at the coffee shop started writing poetry on my cups. The trainer at the gym offered free sessions, and our neighbor Kyle started showing up whenever I needed help with anything Jaden was too tired to handle. Kyle actually told Jaden to his face that real men cherish feminine women instead of exhausting them. Things escalated when I refused to shake hands with Jaden's boss at his promotion dinner because ladylike women don't touch men who aren't their husband. His boss was so offended and confused that he told everyone Jaden had turned me into some kind of submissive robot. The promotion went to Kyle, who spent the entire dinner fetching me drinks and complimenting how refreshingly feminine I was, while Jaden sat there seething. Kyle even pulled out my chair and helped me with my coat while pointedly saying men should treasure feminine women, not burden them. Sunday morning, Jaden was raging about losing another promotion because of my psycho-feminine act. "This has ruined everything," he screamed. "Everyone thinks I'm some controlling freak who broke you." "It's not an act," I said in my sweetest voice while doing my 3rd face mask of the day. "You wanted feminine, so this is who I am now." His phone buzzed with a text from his mom saying she'd seen me having coffee with Kyle, who'd apparently been telling everyone he wanted to rescue me from my controlling boyfriend. I watched Jaden's face go white as he realized other men were actively trying to save me from him. "Kyle asked me to dinner," I mentioned casually. "But honestly, I'm thinking about just being single and dropping this whole feminine act you demanded." I stood up delicately, careful not to smudge my nail art, and smiled. "Turns out I have a lot of options now that everyone thinks you're an abusive controller who broke me." Jaden went very quiet, and something in his expression shifted from anger to calculation. "You think you've won?" he said softly. "You have no idea what you've started." I felt my breath catch in my throat. Jaden's eyes went cold as he walked over to his laptop on the coffee table and started typing something I couldn't see from where I was standing. My stomach dropped when he turned the screen toward me and there was a folder labeled with my name and today's date. He clicked it open and dozens of files filled the screen. He'd been documenting everything too, just like I'd been playing my game. Screenshots of my transformation filled the screen, showing me before and after in side-by-side comparisons. There were recordings too, and he clicked on one where I was talking normally on the phone when I thought he wasn't home. The timestamps went back weeks, showing he'd been planning this for a while. He scrolled down and clicked on a video of me laughing with Kyle at the coffee shop, looking completely normal and not scared at all. I kept my voice sweet and confused, tilting my head and asking what all this meant while my mind raced through what he might do with this evidence. He closed the laptop with a sharp click and said we needed to have a real conversation about consequences. I giggled nervously and said I didn't understand what he meant, but he just stared at me with those cold eyes. That night I barely slept, lying still in bed and listening for any sound from his side of the apartment. Every time he shifted or got up to use the bathroom, my whole body went tense. Around 3 in the morning, I quietly got up and packed an emergency bag with my passport, some cash I'd been hiding, and a change of clothes. I hid it behind my ridiculous collection of pink throw pillows in the closet where he'd never look. Monday morning came too fast, and I maintained the act perfectly while making breakfast, wearing my frilly apron and humming softly. But I noticed Jaden watching me differently now, studying every move I made like a chess player planning moves ahead. He didn't touch his eggs, just sat there watching me flutter around the kitchen. When he got up to leave for work, he kissed my forehead and held it there too long, and it felt like a threat more than affection. His hand gripped my shoulder just a little too tight before he let go. At work, I couldn't focus on anything and kept checking my phone every few minutes. During my lunch break, I finally texted my sister about needing a place to crash for a few days. She responded immediately with question marks and asking if everything was okay. I typed and deleted several messages before just saying I'd explain later, but it was important. She said of course, and asked when I needed to come. That evening, I was washing dishes when the doorbell rang and Kyle was standing there with flowers. He said he'd heard Jaden and I were having problems and wanted to check if I was okay. I politely declined to let him in, keeping my sweet voice while saying it wouldn't be appropriate without Jaden home. Kyle kept insisting he just wanted to talk, stepping closer to the door when I heard Jaden's key in the lock. Kyle was still standing there when Jaden opened the door, and I watched Jaden's jaw tighten as he took in the flowers and Kyle's guilty expression. Kyle mumbled something about just checking in and practically ran down the hallway. Jaden closed the door slowly and asked if Kyle had been inside, and I shook my head with wide eyes. The tension at dinner was suffocating as Jaden asked pointed questions about my day, wanting to know everyone I'd talked to and everywhere I'd gone. I stuck to my sweet persona, giggling about girl stuff at work, and how I'd spent lunch looking at nail art online. He asked to see my phone to look at the nail designs, and I handed it over with a bright smile while mentally cataloging the nearest exits. He scrolled through my messages for way too long before handing it back. Tuesday morning, I discovered why he'd wanted my phone when I noticed the battery draining faster than usual. Looking through my settings during a bathroom break at work, I found a tracking app he'd installed when I wasn't looking. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, but I left it active to avoid suspicion. During my lunch break, I walked to a convenience store and bought a cheap prepaid phone with cash. I hid it in my desk drawer under some tampons where no man would ever look. That evening, I was curled up on the couch painting my toenails when I heard a car pull up outside. My sister knocked on the door, pretending it was a spontaneous visit and acting surprised to see Jaden home. She held up a bottle of wine and said she was in the neighborhood and thought we could have a girls' night. Jaden was overly charming with her, insisting she come in and pulling out her chair at the kitchen table. But I could see her watching him carefully, and she picked up on the weird energy immediately when he kept finding reasons to stay in the room instead of giving us space. She kept the conversation light, talking about work and asking about our weekend plans, but her eyes kept finding mine with unspoken questions. When Jaden finally went to take a shower, I grabbed a pink notepad and scribbled everything down as fast as I could, my hand shaking so bad the words looked like a kid wrote them. My sister was pretending to look at her phone, but I slipped the paper under her wine glass and watched her read it without changing her expression at all. She squeezed my hand 3 times under the table, our old signal from when we were kids that meant she understood and had my back. Jaden came out toweling his hair, and my sister smoothly tucked the note in her purse while complaining about traffic, saying she should head home before it got worse. He walked her to the door, and I heard him apologizing for my weird behavior lately, saying I'd been going through some changes and he was worried about me. Wednesday morning, Jaden woke me up early and called my work before I could even protest, telling them I had a family emergency and wouldn't be in today. He called his own boss next, saying the same thing, then turned to me with this fake concerned smile and said we needed to reconnect after all the stress lately. The way he said it made it clear I didn't have a choice, so I giggled and clapped my hands like it was the best idea ever while my stomach twisted into knots. He drove us to the gym first, watching everyone's reaction when I walked in wearing my pink workout clothes and asking the male trainer to help me with the lightest weights because they were too heavy for delicate me. Then we went to the coffee shop where the poetry guy practically tripped over himself to take my order, while Jaden stood there with his jaw clenched, so tight I thought his teeth might crack. He took me to every single place where I'd been performing my act, studying how people looked at me, how they looked at him, taking mental notes like he was building some kind of case against me. At the grocery store, 3 different men offered to help me reach things on low shelves, and Jaden grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks, steering me toward the exit while muttering about how I'd turned everyone against him. That night after dinner, he pulled out his laptop and showed me printouts of apartments in 3 different states, all small towns hours from any city, talking about how we needed a fresh start away from all these toxic people. My blood went cold looking at those listings in the middle of nowhere, places where nobody would know me, where I'd have no job and no friends and no way to leave. I kept smiling and nodding while he talked about how peaceful it would be, just the 2 of us without all these distractions, but inside I was screaming because I recognized this for what it was. Thursday morning, I waited until I heard his car pull away for work. then grabbed the prepaid phone from my desk drawer and called my sister, dropping the baby voice completely for the first time in weeks. She picked up immediately, and I told her everything about the apartment listings and the tracking app, and how scared I was getting, and we made a plan for me to pack a bag and leave during his monthly poker game on Saturday. I was just putting the phone back when I heard the front door open and my heart stopped, because Jaden was supposed to be at work for another 8 hours. I shoved the phone in the jewelry box and grabbed a bunch of pink necklaces, spreading them on the bed like I was organizing them when he walked into the bedroom. He said he forgot some files and needed to grab them, but his eyes swept the room like he was looking for something specific, and I kept babbling about how I was color coordinating my accessories while praying he couldn't hear my heart pounding. He mentioned casually while gathering his papers that he was thinking about skipping poker this weekend, since we'd been having such a nice time reconnecting. Maybe we could drive out to look at one of those apartments instead. I giggled and said that sounded wonderful, while inside everything collapsed because Saturday was my only chance to get out safely, and now he was taking that away too. Friday morning his phone rang while he was in the shower, and I saw it was his mother calling, so I answered in my sweetest voice, and she immediately asked if I was okay. She said Jaden had been texting her all week about my concerning mental state and sudden personality changes, asking if there was any history of mental illness in my family. I realized with a sick feeling that he was laying groundwork, creating a paper trail that would make anything I said sound like I was having some kind of breakdown. At work that morning, I'd barely sat down at my desk when HR called me in for a meeting, their faces all gentle concern as they explained Jaden had called them yesterday. He'd expressed worry about my recent behavioral changes and asked if they'd noticed anything unusual, suggesting maybe I needed some time off to deal with whatever was happening. They asked careful questions about whether I felt safe at home and if I needed any resources, clearly trying to figure out if I was abused or having a mental health crisis. I had to sit there in my pink dress maintaining my sweet act while navigating their questions, knowing that dropping it now would only confirm Jaden's story that I was unstable. During my lunch break, I locked myself in the bathroom stall and texted my sister from the prepaid phone that things were getting worse, and I needed to leave immediately. She texted back that she'd be there tomorrow with her boyfriend and his brother as backup, and they'd get me out no matter what Jaden tried to pull. That evening after dinner, Jaden pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his social media while I cleared the table in my frilly apron. He looked up at me with that same calculating expression from earlier and said we should deactivate our accounts to focus on our relationship. My stomach twisted, but I kept my sweet smile frozen in place and nodded like it was the best idea ever. He watched me delete the apps from my phone right there at the kitchen table, his eyes never leaving my hands. I went to bed early claiming I needed extra beauty sleep, but really I just laid there staring at the ceiling and counting down the hours until Saturday. The next morning, I woke up to find my laptop open on the kitchen counter with all my social media accounts showing error messages. Jaden was already awake making coffee and mentioned casually that he'd helped me finish deactivating everything since I'd seemed so tired last night. He'd also changed all the passwords to our streaming services for security reasons and would give me the new ones later. My phone buzzed with a text, and Jaden grabbed it before I could reach it. His face darkened for a second before he forced a smile and handed it to me. My sister had texted him directly since she couldn't reach me, reminding him about our girls' day that had been planned for weeks. She was already on her way and would be there in an hour to pick me up for our spa appointment and shopping trip. Jaden's jaw worked as he typed back that, of course I could go, he'd never stop me from seeing family. I rushed to get ready in my most feminine outfit, while Jaden sat on the bed watching me apply makeup with that same studying look. The doorbell rang exactly an hour later, and I hurried to answer it with Jaden right behind me. My sister stood there with her boyfriend Mark and his brother Tom, who she explained just happened to need a ride to the same area. Jaden's mask slipped for just a second, his eyes going hard and cold before he recovered and became the perfect concerned boyfriend. He helped me into my coat and reminded me to be careful, his hand squeezing my shoulder just a little too tight. I kissed his cheek and promised I'd text him every hour, then followed my sister to the car where the men were waiting. As soon as we pulled away from the curb, I told my sister I needed to grab some things from my room for our sleepover tonight. Jaden stood in the doorway watching as I packed my overnight bag, commenting on each item I folded. I managed to slip into the bathroom with my makeup bag and grabbed the envelope I'd hidden behind the toilet tank weeks ago. My hands shook as I stuffed my birth certificate, passport, and emergency cash into the bottom of my cosmetics case. Back in the bedroom, I added my grandmother's jewelry box to the bag, while chatting about nail polish colors. Jaden finally went to make himself lunch, and I quickly grabbed the folder from under the mattress with my work documents and tax returns. Everything went into the pink overnight bag between layers of frilly pajamas and hair accessories. Jaden walked me to the car and leaned in to kiss me goodbye, whispering that he'd pick me up tomorrow morning at 10 sharp. The second the car turned the corner, I dropped the baby voice completely and told Mark to drive fast and take random turns. My sister grabbed my hand as I started shaking, the months of constant performance finally crashing down on me. Tom kept checking the mirrors while Mark took us on a winding route through 3 different neighborhoods. We stopped at a gas station where I threw my phone in the trash, and my sister gave me an old one she'd brought. An hour passed before Jaden started calling my sister's phone repeatedly. She let it go to voicemail each time while we documented everything on Tom's phone. The first few messages were concerned, asking if I was okay and when I'd be home. By the 5th message, his voice had shifted to anger, demanding to know where I was. The 10th message was completely calm and professional, as he stated he'd filed a missing person report due to my recent unstable behavior and mental health concerns. Mark immediately called his friend from law school who specialized in domestic cases while Tom drove us to my sister's apartment. We spent the rest of Saturday night organizing all the evidence I'd been secretly collecting. Screenshots of Jaden's controlling texts, photos of the tracking app he'd installed, recordings I'd made of his rants about my appearance. The lawyer said we had enough for a restraining order and would help file it Monday morning. She also advised us to go to the police station first thing Sunday to address the false missing person report. Sunday morning, we arrived at the police station with all our documentation in a neat folder. The officer at the desk looked skeptical at first until I showed him the tracking app still active on the old phone. His expression changed when he saw the location history showing Jaden had been monitoring everywhere I went for weeks. We played him one of the recordings where Jaden screamed about me embarrassing him by being too feminine after demanding I be more feminine. The officer took notes and agreed to mark the missing person report as a domestic situation requiring special handling. Throughout Sunday, my sister's phone buzzed constantly with texts from different numbers I didn't recognize. Each one was from Jaden using burner phones or apps, alternating between saying he was worried sick and threatening to share videos of me. Some messages claimed I was mentally ill and needed help, while others accused me of being a manipulative witch who'd ruined his life. We screenshot every single message and added them to our growing evidence file. The lawyer texted that she'd already started preparing the restraining order paperwork for tomorrow's filing. Monday morning came too fast, and I barely slept, checking my phone every few minutes even though I knew Jaden couldn't reach me on the new number. My sister drove me to the lawyer's office downtown, a small building squeezed between a dry cleaner and a sandwich shop. The lawyer was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with folders already spread across her desk when we walked in. She reviewed everything we'd brought, nodding at the tracking app screenshots and frowning at the messages from the burner phones. She explained that we had solid grounds for a restraining order based on the tracking alone, but the escalating messages made it even stronger. The whole meeting took 2 hours, going through every detail of Jaden's behavior over the past few weeks, and she kept taking notes on her yellow legal pad. She said she'd file the emergency order today, and we'd probably have a hearing by Wednesday. On the drive back to my sister's place, my old phone started buzzing in my purse where I'd left it turned on to keep collecting evidence. Kyle had somehow found out I'd left Jaden, probably from social media or mutual friends, and the texts started coming fast. First, he offered to help me move my stuff. Then he wanted to take me to dinner to make sure I was okay. Then he said he had a spare room if I needed somewhere to stay. Each message got pushier than the last, and by the 10th one he was saying Jaden never deserved me, and he'd been waiting for this chance. I showed my sister the messages, and she grabbed the phone, reading them with her mouth dropping open. I realized I'd basically traded one problem for another, creating this whole mess with my stupid revenge plan. The lawyer called that afternoon saying she'd filed for the emergency restraining order and included all our evidence about the tracking and threats. The hearing was set for Wednesday morning at 9, and she'd already sent notice to Jaden's last known address. She warned me to stay alert because people sometimes react badly when they get served with these papers. Tuesday, I had to go back to work, and my sister insisted on driving me even though it meant she'd be late for her own job. I walked into the building feeling like everyone was staring at me, even though they couldn't possibly know what was happening. Around lunch, the security desk called my extension, saying my boyfriend was in the lobby worried about me. My stomach dropped and I asked them not to let him up, explaining there was a restraining order being processed. The security guard's voice changed immediately, getting more serious, and he said they'd handle it. 20 minutes later, he called back saying Jaden had told them I was mentally ill, and he was concerned for my safety, but they'd asked him to leave the property. I gave them the case number for the restraining order filing, and they said they'd add it to their incident report. HR called me an hour later, asking me to come to their office immediately. The head of HR and my direct manager were both there, looking concerned and confused. They said Jaden had called them yesterday claiming I was having a mental breakdown and might be dangerous to myself or coworkers. I took a deep breath and told them everything, starting with Jaden's demands that I be more feminine, then my whole revenge plan with the pink stuff and baby voice, and finally his tracking and threats. They sat there stunned as I showed them the screenshots and explained about the restraining order. My manager actually laughed when I described making Jaden explain to his mom why I needed 4 hours to get ready, but the HR director looked horrified at the whole situation. They assured me the company would support me completely, and offered to have security escort me to my car for the next few weeks. They also banned Jaden from the property immediately, and said they'd alert the front desk with his photo. That evening, my sister and I searched online for studio apartments, finding one across town that was available immediately. It was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but the building had good locks and security cameras in the hallways. The landlord could meet us tomorrow after the court hearing to show us the place. We filled out the application online, and my sister offered to co-sign since my credit was tangled up with Jaden's on our old apartment. Wednesday morning arrived, and I put on my most normal, professional outfit for court. No pink anywhere. The courthouse was busier than I expected, with people lined up at metal detectors and lawyers rushing around with rolling briefcases. We found the right courtroom and sat in the back row until our case was called. Jaden showed up in a suit, looking calm and put together, with papers of his own. When we got before the judge, Jaden tried to paint me as unstable, showing photos of our pink apartment and claiming I'd been acting erratically for months. The judge barely looked at his evidence before turning to our side. My lawyer presented the tracking app evidence first, showing how Jaden had been monitoring my location for weeks without my knowledge. Then she showed the threatening messages from multiple phone numbers, highlighting the pattern of escalation. The judge asked Jaden directly if he'd installed the tracking app, and he tried to explain it was for my safety because I'd been acting strange. The judge cut him off and asked a simple yes or no question about the tracking, and Jaden had to admit yes. The temporary restraining order was granted on the spot, effective immediately, and Jaden was ordered to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. The judge also ordered him to surrender any keys to my apartment to the bailiff right there in court. Jaden pulled his keyring out slowly, taking off 2 keys and handing them to the bailiff with no expression on his face at all. The judge warned him that violating the order would result in immediate arrest, and set another hearing for a permanent order in 2 weeks. Thursday morning, my sister's boyfriend borrowed a truck from his work, and we started moving my stuff from the old apartment to the new studio. We worked fast and quiet, just grabbing essentials like clothes, documents, and my laptop, leaving all the pink decorations and furniture behind. Every car that passed made me jumpy, checking to make sure it wasn't Jaden, even though I knew he couldn't legally come near me. We were carrying boxes down to the truck when Kyle appeared at the end of the hallway, smiling like he'd won something. He rushed over saying he'd heard about the restraining order and wanted to help me move, reaching for a box in my hands. I stepped back and said no thanks. We had it handled, but he kept insisting he could help, that I needed a strong man to protect me now. My sister's boyfriend stepped between us and told Kyle to back off, that I'd said no, and that meant no. Kyle got angry, saying he was just trying to be nice, and that I'd clearly appreciated male attention before based on how I'd been dressing. My sister's boyfriend took another step forward and told him to leave now or he'd call the police. Kyle finally left, muttering about ungrateful women, and we finished loading the truck as fast as possible. My sister's boyfriend drove us straight to the new studio, while I kept checking the mirrors for anyone following us. The place was smaller than what I was used to, but it had 2 deadbolts and a chain lock that made me feel safer. We carried the boxes up 3 flights of stairs, and I arranged my clothes in the tiny closet while my sister checked all the windows to make sure they locked properly. That night I barely slept, jumping at every sound in the hallway and checking the locks 4 times before finally passing out around dawn. Friday morning I went to work with copies of the restraining order paperwork, and sat in HR's office while they made calls to security about adding both Jaden and Kyle to the banned list. The security guard at the front desk took their photos from social media and printed them out to post at all entrances. My boss let me park in the executive garage with better lighting and cameras after I explained the situation. The weekend dragged by with me basically hiding in the studio while my sister stayed over to keep me company. We ordered Chinese food instead of going out and watched old movies while I obsessively checked that the blinds were completely closed. Every time someone walked past the door, I froze until their footsteps faded away. My sister made a grocery run for me because I was too scared to leave, bringing back enough food for a week and new batteries for the smoke detector that kept beeping. Monday morning, my sister called me at work saying Jaden's mother had contacted her through Facebook. She read me the messages where his mom said Jaden was devastated and had started therapy to work on his issues. The woman never directly asked me to drop the order, but kept mentioning how this was ruining her son's life and how he'd never meant any real harm. My sister blocked her after sending back a short message saying all communication needed to go through lawyers. I made an appointment with a therapist that my company's employee assistance program recommended. Walking into her office that Thursday, I sat on her couch and started talking about the whole stupid game I'd played. Halfway through explaining the pink decorations and baby voice, I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. She handed me tissues and waited while I admitted how scared I was now, how the game had gone way too far and I didn't know how to feel safe anymore. The therapist listened to everything without judgment, then helped me understand that my elaborate revenge might have been over the top, but Jaden's response showed who he really was underneath. She pointed out that tracking apps and threats weren't normal reactions to relationship problems. We spent the rest of the session making a safety plan with specific steps for different scenarios. 3 weeks crawled by without any incidents, though I still checked my locks multiple times every night and took different routes to work each day. I started sleeping a little better, only waking up twice a night instead of every hour. The therapist taught me breathing exercises that helped when I felt panic rising in my chest. HR called me into a meeting where they told me Jaden's boss had reached out to them about putting Jaden on administrative leave. Apparently, 2 other women from his department had come forward with complaints about inappropriate behavior after hearing about my situation. The company was conducting a full investigation that would probably take several weeks. A month after the separation, HR informed me that Jaden had been terminated from his position. Kyle had gotten the promotion permanently, though I'd already blocked him on everything after he kept trying to send me flowers and showing up at the coffee shop where he knew I used to go. My sister came over that weekend with paint samples and we started planning how to redecorate the studio in my actual style. We packed up all the pink stuff I'd bought for the act, laughing about maybe having a bonfire but deciding to donate it to a community theater group instead. They were thrilled to get 3 boxes of frilly aprons, pink accessories, and costume jewelry for their upcoming production. The studio started feeling more like home with my regular clothes back in the closet, and my comfortable furniture arranged how I liked it. 2 months after leaving Jaden, I could finally sleep through most nights without waking up in a panic. The therapist said I was making good progress processing both the relationship and my own role in how things escalated. We worked through my guilt about the manipulation, while also validating my fear about Jaden's response. She helped me see patterns I'd missed before, like how he'd always found ways to make me feel small, even before I started the feminine act. I learned to recognize the difference between normal relationship conflicts and controlling behavior that could turn dangerous. My lawyer called 3 weeks later with news that made me drop my coffee mug. Jaden had packed up and moved back to his parents' house in another state, according to the court filing. The judge made the restraining order permanent since he didn't show up to contest it. I spent the rest of that day walking around my studio, touching all my normal clothes and regular furniture, finally feeling like the air was mine to breathe again. Work got easier after that, and I stopped looking over my shoulder in the parking lot. My boss pulled me into her office 6 months later with a promotion offer based on my actual performance numbers. HR mentioned during the paperwork that they'd created new harassment policies because of what happened with my case. The raise meant I could afford a bigger place, but I liked my little studio with its good locks and security cameras. Dating felt impossible at first, but my therapist kept reminding me that not every guy was Jaden. I met someone at my sister's birthday party 8 months after everything ended. He laughed when I told him the pink story over coffee, but understood why I'd felt cornered enough to do it. We took things slow, and he never once complained about my jeans or work schedule. My sister started calling herself my bodyguard whenever we went out together. Her boyfriend proposed to her at Christmas, getting down on one knee right in my living room where we were decorating my first real tree since the breakup. She asked me to be maid of honor while we were both crying and hugging. I helped her pick a dress that wasn't pink, and we laughed about that for 20 minutes straight. A full year after leaving Jaden, I was buying groceries when someone called my name. Jaden's old best friend stood there with a basket of vegetables, looking uncomfortable but determined to talk. He apologized for not seeing what was happening sooner, and mentioned Jaden was still in therapy working through his control issues. I thanked him for the information, but kept the conversation short, paid for my stuff, and left without looking back. My therapist high-fived me at our next session for handling it so well. She said my progress was remarkable, that I'd learned to set real boundaries without needing elaborate revenge plots. We worked through exercises where I practiced saying no without guilt or fear of someone's reaction. The new apartment I moved into after my promotion felt like home immediately. I hung up my tools on a pegboard in the kitchen and fixed the loose cabinet door myself the first week. Friends came over for game nights, and nobody commented on my lack of nail polish or choice of sneakers. My sister brought her fiancé over for dinner every Sunday, and we'd cook together while talking about wedding plans. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, so I turned one into an office where I could work on projects for my new position. I bought furniture I actually liked, sturdy wood pieces that didn't need pink throw pillows to hide them. Sometimes I'd catch myself checking locks twice or tensing when a man raised his voice, but those moments got rarer. Looking back now, I see how we both made terrible choices that fed off each other. I pushed too hard with my revenge, and he showed his true controlling nature when challenged. The whole thing could have gone much worse if I hadn't gotten out when I did. My therapist helped me understand that his need to control me was always there, just hidden under normal relationship stuff until I pushed back. I'm grateful my sister and her boyfriend were there to help me escape safely. These days I wear whatever feels comfortable, fix things when they break, and speak in my normal voice. I can order pizza without performing femininity and shake hands with whoever I want. The promotion at work led to managing my own team, and nobody questions whether I deserve it. Kyle tried reaching out a few times through social media, but I blocked him everywhere after he wouldn't stop sending flowers to my office. My life feels normal and quiet in the best way now. I go to the gym at whatever time works for my schedule, not when someone else decides to drive me. The coffee shop guy still writes on my cup sometimes, but now it's just my name with a smiley face. I'm finally just myself again, and that's enough. That's the whole story wrapped up. If even one piece of it gave you something to think about, then it was worth sharing. Subscribe and you'll always have the next tip waiting.